Okay, well, welcome, Ben, to Emotionally Unavailable. It's so nice to meet you. I read your profile again this morning, and I read what you put in the notes when you signed up. There's so much we could talk about. Okay, so you used the word embodied in the notes that you left, and I giggled because that is one of the words that I learned in context, but didn't actually fully understand what the word meant for quite some time. So I would like to start there.
Definitely. Let's go for it.
However you explain that, and even how it worked in your life is fine too.
Having suffered a lot of physical and emotional abuse during childhood, there was the abuse that came on the home front, parents, and there was also bullying that was thrown in on top of that. It came from school. And growing up under such circumstances, one goes into survival mode. You're in somewhat of a state of shock. It doesn't fully register what's happening, what you're going through. And so all that distressing emotion, the lived events, the impressions thereof get stored within the body. And so there's that component. And the other thing is it leaves you hugely disconnected. If you think of the human body, the brain itself as well, like the hard drive of a computer or an external hard drive. And there's only a limited amount of space in these drives. And so when we experience these traumas and other adverse events, we internalize that. Then what happens is our body continues to carry it, and it's stored within the musculature and the tissues, the organs themselves, cells throughout the body. And again, it's occupying a lot of bandwidth. It prevents a lot of crucial faculties from fully developing. And so for me, there was some degree of incapacitation, and a lot of people are not all that functional because of the extent of the emotional wounding, the trauma, the adversity they've internalized, all the emotions that arise in response to it that are not being digested. So when I was in my teens and up into my 20s, and people would comment like, "You're not inhabiting your body." It's like, really? I mean, it didn't fully make sense to me. I didn't totally comprehend what they were talking about. It did over time. I had this fascination with Native Americans from early childhood, and that fascination continued to grow into adolescence. And at 14, when I heard about the traditional Native American doctors, I'm thinking, well, if I'm ever given the opportunity, this is what I'm going to do with my life. I didn't know that would happen, but I took off at 17. I'm living in a community of Kiowa Indians, and I met one of their last surviving traditional doctors who transmitted portions of his healing gifts to me. And then when you receive that transmission, you're expected to go through the vision quest. It typically entails 4 days and nights without food and water. I was very afraid to work on my own. I helped my mentor some, but when I started, that's when I had all this backlog of emotion, the trauma that I was carrying, that began to resurface. And it was like pouring hydrogen peroxide into an infected wound. And so what I'm getting at here is that I had to learn to work effectively with those emotions to actually digest the impressions of all that lived experience I'd internalized and all the emotions that were backed up inside of me. And by doing that successively, there's been greater and greater embodiment. There's a lot of practice. There's this whole system of meditation practices I developed. I see a lot of forms of meditation practice that, like there's an ashram, and I worked with some of the people from it. It's northwest of New York City. And some of those people were really dangerously dissociated. They were out there. And that could present a certain danger because if you have people that already are carrying trauma and whatever other wounding, and that could put them at risk when they're, again, carrying the trauma and that dissociated and it's being further exacerbated. It could destabilize some individuals even. We're faced with various challenges, difficulties in our life, adversity, and we're fighting it, we're resisting it, we're complaining about how unfair life is and wishing everything would be different. And it's understandable. We would like things to be different. Yet, as much as I can, I've been teaching myself to okay, This is what's happening. Embrace it. How can I work with this constructively? And when the emotions arise in response to these lived experiences, to actually be able to work with them. And there's a practice that I teach people that, start by acknowledging what's happening. What are the actual circumstances? What's going on, whether it's in your relationships or maybe work-related, some other area of your life, health concerns, what's going on? 2, what do you feel in your body in response to it? 3, where are these feelings and sensations residing within your body? 4, bring as much awareness as you can. You're not looking at the feelings from a distance. You're getting deep into the core of it and breathing all the way down to your abdomen, expanding your abdomen, then ribcage, pausing, and very slowly exhale all the way out and pausing again. And doing this, staying with the feelings and sensations as they go through their progression. Often they will intensify. They will expand to feel more of your body, move to different locations, or go through a whole succession of feeling. It could be anger and frustration to acceptance and, well, okay, I got to face these issues and just do what I can here. So it's a continual, ongoing process, and feel free to jump in if you need to.
Well, I wondered, I've never asked anyone this, but I do know about some Eastern medicine practices. I'm not going to word this correctly because it's been a while since I've talked about this, but essentially different emotions being attached to different body part ailments. I'm wondering, because of your background in the medicine that you've learned, is there a correlation between where you feel or even maybe what the sensation you're feeling is to some emotional experience? Or is it just random and we don't have to know why? I'm asking this because I tend to have mostly the same ones for the same, anytime I feel like right before expansion, basically, when things go really good specifically, I will feel like a full body zap for a second, which I think is crazy that I never noticed that before I got really in tuned, but still it's there. And it will be the same reaction if like I'm nervous or anxious about, like, something says something that triggers real fear in me, then I'll have that same reaction, versus when I feel betrayed by something, my tummy feels like there was a roller coaster, So I'm just curious if, in your opinion, there is any reason for the specific sensations or where you're hurting, if you're hurting.
A big part of it for me, I was very numb to my own emotions, having grown up, as I said, suffering, enduring a lot of trauma, adversity, and like everyone else, as a child, as a teen, you don't know how to cope with that. You're just doing the best you can to get through from one day to the next, to survive, to not get attacked or beaten or whatever, screamed at, yelled at, criticized. So that left me very numb, very disconnected. I couldn't feel, I didn't register a lot. And it wasn't until, as I said, in my mid-20s, I'd apprenticed with this Native American doctor, Horace Dolkai, from the Kiowa tribe, when I was starting at the age of 20 up to 23. And then the apprenticeship was so extreme, so intense. I mean, he'd do things like he dropped me off in the middle of the Hopi Indian reservation with $30 in my backpack, said, hitchhike to Las Vegas, make it the best you can. And he just expected me to survive during that time. After a few months, he showed up and he's like, ready to go? And he told me to let him know where I was staying. What?
I thought you meant for a fucking week, a few months.
Yeah, a few months.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was terrifying. At
That's
20.
wild.
Yeah, and it's hitchhiked from the Hopi reservation down to... I don't remember all the roads through there. I'm not that familiar with Arizona. And I think it was near Kingman. I think I was on I-40, and there were these 3 guys in a car stopped and picked me up, and they were heading to Las Vegas. That was terrifying for me, at 20, and here I am. And so even then, I was going through all this ordeal of the training. It was pretty intense. So I parked my ass into college for a couple of years.
Okay.
to reassemble myself after training with my mentor and to reflect on things. And there was a lot going.
Hey guys, it's me. Emotionally Unavailable is produced 100% in-house by me with no team. So if this show has ever helped you and you want to give back, subscribe to the Patreon. There's several different levels with different benefits in each. Check the show notes and you can see what each tier subscription will get you. There's also lots of fun things coming down the pipeline for the Patreon subscribers. So get in early. You can get a workbook, you can buy merch, you can do any of the things, and all of that supports the show to help it keep going. Really appreciate every single one of you. I love you so much, and I can't wait to see what we continue to do together.
I haven't ever seen, encountered, or even heard of a healer that had as great of capacity as my mentor Horace did. And yet he didn't know how to deal with his own emotional wounding. He would get really irritated at me because I was so dissociated. I think part of the intensity of the training, the ordeals he put me through, part of it was to get me into my body, to force me to tune into my intuition. But again, he didn't really understand.
While you're more in survival mode than ever.
Yeah, he didn't understand the emotional component, but it was when I was in my mid-20s, I started working with people, and then that trauma began to resurface, and especially in my attempts to form romantic, intimate relationships, it surfaced.
Yes, and that's where it always gets you.
It certainly does. And when you're that disconnected from your body and you hold all pain, all that distressing emotion and the representation of that lived experience, especially when you're abused by a parent or parent and step-parent, and your drivers, your internal models of attachment are totally screwed up. And
totally. Yep.
And so that has a tremendous bearing on the kind of individual you find yourself forming attachments to. One, it's like I'd be forming attachments to women that really were not a good match, but when you're that disconnected, you're not getting it. I wasn't getting it.
Yeah.
And then forming attachments to some women who were abusive. Some actually took delight. There was a cruel streak there, probably because of their own wounding.
I'm sure that was really familiar to your nervous system.
Yeah. And trying to hold on and trying to make those relationships work. And so
I just have to know what you need better, and I have to do more, and then I will be fine.
Yeah, definitely. That's how
I resonate.
You summed it up very well there. So initially I went into psychotherapy because not knowing what else to do, I was a totally fucked up mess. and so psychotherapy provided a valuable intellectual understanding of my emotional wounding.
Insight.
The dysfunction, the understanding of my dysfunctional background and patterns that I was enacting in my relationships. And I've always had this thirst to understand, to always go deeper, to understand as much as I possibly can about what's going on. So I had already studied psychology in college, but it was like I was devouring clinical psych textbooks. Anything having to do with trauma and attachment wounds. And I was learning a lot, understanding a lot, but the patterns were persisting. I continued to form attachments to the same kind of individual and
now you're armed with enough information to pathologize them and analyze them all day and be like, well, they're just doing that because of their attachments and whatever else.
Yeah. The pain that arose in those times was so overwhelming, at times excruciating, but instinctively I had the sense that I needed to dive into the depths of what I was feeling. And would do so often for hours on end. Couldn't really function otherwise. Couldn't really do much else. So it's like, well, dive into it. And what I found is that as I kept breathing, as I said, often for hours on end, at a certain point it would break open and I could feel that pain coming out of my body in waves. And then there would be these powerful emanations that would begin to flow from within. And I could feel this sense of connectedness to a higher power beginning to emerge from within as that happened. This practice is extraordinarily powerful. I'm not in pain like that now, thankfully. I moved through. I ran into the limitations of my body and mind's own innate healing intelligence. When I hit that wall, even though working with the practice, I could feel those unhealthy attachments beginning to dissolve. I was still finding myself forming attachments to and attracting that same type of individual.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I began to explore any therapeutic intervention that held promise. Deep tissue body work is very helpful in that there's so much of the sadness, grief, anger, frustration, fear, anxiety, whatever emotions that we're experiencing get stored in the connective tissues, the musculature, the organs throughout the body. And so the deep tissue body work would help to dislodge a lot of this emotion, bring it up. And once that happened, then I could work with the emotions. It helps to bridge the gap. And that's an important part of becoming more embodied. I could feel that was actually starting to rewire that patterning that developed as a result of those traumatic lived experiences that I'd internalized. And that was the beginning of the relationships changing in their quality, where I started beginning to form attachments to healthier individuals. I got to work with some of these really gifted healers, and it was extraordinarily helpful, but often I would have to wait months and years. And last time I got to see someone who worked on these levels, that first time back in Oklahoma on the Wichita Mountains, and feeling that presence descend into my body. And I was reliving the traumas, this early childhood trauma. And I remember that first time there, on one hand, freezing my ass off because the sleeping bag was grossly inadequate. But on the other, here, these lived experiences and emotions flooding back into my awareness. And this has happened multiple times. In many instances, I would be recovering the memories, the impressions of lived experiences I'd internalized, and the emotions. It's all flooding back in this intensity. For those experiences that I still had some recollection of, the emotions were much more intense. And I feel that's because when we're living through those events where, as I said before, we're in that state of shock, it doesn't fully register with us because we're in survival mode. So I'm experiencing all that. It's coming back. I could feel myself, that presence working through me, helping me to digest the lived experience, all that backlog of charged emotion. And I will have a lot of these emotions continuing to surface in the coming days and weeks. Working with the practice I described earlier, I'll be digesting that. And as all that's happening, this new foundation's taking shape. And so it's like rewiring me. And being acutely sensitive, very empathic, I feel like I have this acute sense of where I'm at with people and with the world around me, how the world responds to me, all this. And so I'm well aware of where I am in a sense. But then as I go back out and I'm engaging with people, I'm just sensing, I'm feeling how people are responding to me. And I could feel it became strikingly apparent over time that people were becoming kinder. And there's still times people will be assholes. Some people are like that.
Some people are.
Yeah, but there's a lot more kindness because we carry a lot of this emotional wounding, this trauma, adversity we've internalized, and all the emotions that we have yet to digest. And that creates barriers. It creates this buffering, this gap between our soul or spirit and our physical bodies. I've also trained 17 years with the Chinese master in Xing Yi Quan, Baguazhang, Tai Chi, and Qigong. These are internal martial arts rooted in Taoism. And his English isn't all that great, but he was articulating to me that part of the Taoist philosophy. And Taoism is pretty broad. There are different lineages. So this is from the perspective of his lineage, but they were saying that all of our soul doesn't come into the body. And part of the purpose of doing the intensive daily practice where you're continually building this internal power is you bring more of the soul into the body. And you see that yin-yang emblem, that symbol. And it symbolizes, that soul aspect and the embodied aspect. That's part of what it's symbolizing. And bringing that together, merging them and building this presence. And so the understanding is you have a lot of people, they carry this tremendous wounding and they're not dealing with it. It's not healing. And so they say that when you leave your body at the end of this life, a lot of that wounding, what you carry that you haven't healed and transformed, it's too heavy. It stays behind. You lose parts of yourself. Whereas they say when you take the steps to heal and transform this wounding, you're building, you're increasing. And so when you go out, you've evolved to a higher level. And there's also within the Hindu Vedic tradition, and even in Tibetan, that you go through this evolution, facing what it is that needs to be dealt with. You evolve as an individual. And so I work with that. And a big part of this embodiment, we all face challenges in our lives, and this world is ever changing. When I started my practice, I was back in the late 80s and working into the 90s. First, it was very difficult because I carried so much trauma and was very much in my own healing process and incapacitated even by my trauma at times. I think it's so important, whatever challenge we're facing, that we jump into the best of our ability and embrace life as it presents itself. And I find the more I do that, like I have this tremendous aversion to a lot of the technology. And
Really?
yeah, and especially a lot of the people who develop these platforms that we're having to use.
Mm-hmm.
There's all these quirks and things that are maddeningly frustrating. And there were times I would get so frustrated and just say, fuck it, and just get up and walk away from it.
Tonight with this. I asked my 12-year-old to set up my fucking printer the other day. And it's not that I don't know how to do it. The way it is in my office, my husband uses that space too. I didn't know which cord was which and whatever, but my 12-year-old knows exactly how to do it. And I was so annoyed by the whole thing. So I'm like, I shouldn't have to ask my 12-year-old how to fucking print something in my own house. But that's how it is. It's all the advancements seem so easy for the younger generation. But like, I think we've just become so used to things being the way they are. My capacity for change is much lower. I don't need it to keep changing all the time.
I'll do this practice. I'll sit down, close my eyes, just let come to my awareness whatever pressing issues, and drop into those feelings and breathe from the depths of them. I'm not always having emotion flooding me or surfacing. So sometimes I'm just breathing into just sensations or just lingering feelings. Growing up in that evangelical movement, and being traumatized by that as well. I'll listen to Bart Ehrman. I mean, he's amazing, and he just dissects the Bible. And
where did you grow up?
Behind the pine tree curtain in Southeast Texas.
Really? Texas? Okay. Yeah. So you had a very similar upbringing to me then, it sounds like.
Yeah.
'Cause I was born and raised in Oklahoma. I've been here my whole life, but our cultures are very similar. Texas might be worse. In a lot of ways they are. But I was just wondering, because that religious deconstruction, boy, I still see it come up. Did you really struggle with the idea that you were being punished all the time? Like, was that a struggle for you after leaving any sort of religious programming?
It was very difficult for me. And at the age of 10, I was taken to see the minister of my mom's church. And he's telling me that if I don't accept, now I use the term contract, Jesus is my Lord Savior, I'm going to burn in hell for all eternity. That's terrifying when you're a 10-year-old. And
even though my friends and I had this experience, Bart, even though we did all the things, we said the sinner's prayer, we asked Jesus into our hearts, whatever, we would still, like 9 years old, be laying in our bed at night crying like, but what if it's not enough? What if I really am going to hell? Kids shouldn't be laying in their bed crying about going to hell.
My response was, for instance, if you don't like vanilla ice cream, if you find the taste disgusting, there's nothing anyone can say or do to convince you otherwise. You just absolutely fucking hate it. Which I did. And so there are aspects of Christianity, and I don't mean to attack anyone's faith or belief or anything, but for me, it never felt...
You were like, okay, kind of side-eyeing the whole thing from a young age?
Yeah. And so
good for you. I didn't have those critical thinking skills. I did not.
Yeah, maybe that's why they sensed that there was something different about me. There was something wrong or something. They were dogpiling me in front of the church at one point, wailing like saying things like, Satan, get your hands off of him. He's God's child.
I was about to say, you were practically possessed in their world.
Yeah, definitely. But
Shit.
there's a part of me as an adolescent who's like, well, this is a real fucked up asshole of a God, but I got to believe this shit. Otherwise, if I don't, I'm going to burn in hell for all eternity.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but, it's amazing to continue to study like all these historical scholars, because, for instance, the whole Exodus, for instance, the historians who go back and there's no historical evidence. The Egyptians documented it. There is no historical evidence for this large contingent of, the people of who became the people of Israel and Judah, whatever. There's no historical evidence for that, so it's all the shit that's made up. And you just see how crazy people were. And now you have these massive churches and the evangelists and massive followings, and all this shit's built around this whole fictional narrative that people have internalized, and people are nuts. And even Christ himself was an apocalypticist. And that was a radical movement in Judaism where they believed that the earth was controlled by evil forces and the kingdom of God would descend onto the planet Earth. And the righteous would rise into positions of power, and the ones who were then wealthy would be subjected to all kinds of hell and misery. And Christ himself believed that. He himself was an apocalypticist. He was part of that movement. That's what he preached. And the Gospels, written decades or 100 years or whatever after the death of Christ. And, it's amazing. There's so much, and I'd encourage you to study the historians. And, you learn that the scribes themselves, it's like there was no fact checking in those days. We barely have enough now in the present day, but people could make up all kinds of shit and say, it's the word of God. It's like, no, you're absolutely fucking crazy.
Still.
They do.
Yes, I totally agree.
To me, it's like the only difference between a religion and a cult really is the number of adherents. It's all cults in a way.
It is. Yeah. That's why sometimes I'm like, I have to quit being so sure about everything. Like, I still have to stay open to learning new stuff. And then I feel like, but at first there was real I was so righteous because I had started deconstructing Christianity and then found things that made so much more sense to me. So then I got a little judgmental, but I'm still just working through so much religious trauma that it's just, I get triggered very easily by it when people say certain things to me. And then I cannot even help but be a dick in that moment because I'm like, well, you had no problem saying what you wanted to say to me. So I'm going to say what I want to say back. Cause for me, it's the entitlement. And it's unfair to constantly be bombarded by this one thing. Okay, Ben, I have a client right after this, so I got to wrap it up. Tell us where we can find you, learn more from you, all the things.
Sure. My main website is benoofana.com. And there's a contact form. That's the best way to message me, especially times when I'm out of the country. There's also teachmetoMeditate.com because I teach this whole series of meditation practices that are all about helping you to become more embodied. I work with people either individually in person or over the phone. If you're going through a breakup or divorce, if you're right in the midst of relationships blown up, you've been ghosted, there's breakupfirstaid.com. Heal My Heartache for those struggling with long-standing attachment wounds. You keep ending up with the wrong person. Disastrous relationships. So Heartache Hotline for those who really need someone. You're in crisis. You need to reach out to someone right away. You can find me on Instagram, YouTube under my name. And so definitely reach out if I could be of assistance.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome. And I'm so happy to join you for this conversation.
Thank you. I'm going to press stop if you'll hang out one sec.
Sure.
Thanks for coming to Emotionally Unavailable. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, and share. Emotionally Unavailable. All right, that's it from me. So make sure that you check out the show notes for links. And until next time, let's all just keep swimming.
INDEPE and cut.